about the billionaire class is that they seem to need...
I have found myself thinking about that question for quite some time now. I've made a few videos on that myself, and this is the best answer I can come up with. I don't think that it's a mental illness with many of these people. What I think it is that most of them are actually fake. They don't really have any of the wealth that they profess to have. Keep in mind, how does a billionaire access their billions? Because almost all of it, like I would say, with the exception of maybe like, J. Paul Getty's grandson and like a few other people that actually might have that much money, and a few of the orange internet money people who might have that in actual cash, most do not. Most of it's all on paper. It's all on asset valuations that in many cases they themselves have valued. They say, oh, I bought this property and I own it, and so now I'm gonna make it into like a little super exclusive hotel in Florida, and now I'm gonna value it at $12 billion. Like that's just insane, right? And what everybody else sees, they see the banks say, oh well, yeah, the banks just go along with it, it's cool. Yeah, they do that because they're gonna loan money to that fake billionaire now. The guy who, and I think it's a lot more sinister and a bit more complicated than just a mental side. I think what happens is that in order for them to access these billions, they have to borrow it. And anybody, like if you came to me and you said, hey Axel, I want to borrow $1 billion from you, and I had it, let's say I had $1 billion I was willing to lend you, with interest, mind you, I'm going to say, yeah, sure, you got to pay this back, and here's your interest rate. Here is your payments that you're going to need to make, maybe annualized or whatever it is. So we're going to write a bond for you to do this, and you're going to have to pay this back with interest. But I'm also going to put something else in this contract. A non-disclosure agreement is going to go in the contract, and it's going to say that you're going to pretty much anytime I have some propaganda that I need to be pushed out into the world, you're also going to do that. Otherwise, I'm going to call this money back with interest and penalties and sue you on top of that. This is what I think, because it is a weird phenomena when you see these so-called famous billionaires that are always trying to maneuver themselves into the media. They're like, it's weird. They're always trying to be in the, they're photobombing basically everything all the time. And then it's, look, hey, I'm investing in this new project. Quick, you should invest money over here. And then a bunch of people will go do that. And that's how they make some of these interest payments, is they take some of that money in. It's the borrow Peter, it's the rob Peter to pay Paul thing, right? That's all it is. And I think that happens a lot more than people really realize. Because you're right. What would a normal person do if I got my checkbook out and I just wrote you a check for $1 billion and I just handed it to you and said, here you go, it's free, no charge, you don't need to pay it back. Have the money, goodbye. What would most normal people do? They would go do stuff they want to do with their life. They wouldn't be running around trying to become famous. In fact, everybody I know, if they had large amounts of money, they all say the same thing. Dude, I would move to the middle of nowhere and vanish. That is what like everybody says. So why is it that this particular personality type seems to be cropping up an awful lot in the so-called billionaire category, where they've all got to be famous and relevant, and they've got to weigh in on absolutely every issue? Like, for real, like absolutely every issue, they've got to weigh in on it. They've got to have an opinion on it. And they got to try and get some outrage on this side of the political spectrum so they can get money from the other side of the political spectrum. There's a whole Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode about that. I mean, it's like, this is the kind of thing that they do. It's because they're frauds. That's what I see it as. Because they owe a bunch of money. It's like, what is it, every billionaire owes $1 billion or more? Yeah, they got to keep making those interest payments. And again, like I said, what else is in that contract? Because I think it's a lot more than people realize what they've actually agreed to. They agreed to do all this stuff. They agreed to be famous. They agreed to weigh in on stupid issues and go make complete fools of themselves on TV. And talk about issues about which they know nothing. or we're going to make you a captain of industry. We're going to just go ahead and make you a CEO of this company here, and all you got to do is just follow our orders. And that's why you see these CEOs that are so checked out, they don't even know what business their model they're in. They don't even know. There's tons of them. I run into them. Dude, they have no idea what they're doing. They don't. You ask them a little bit about their company, they have no clue what goes on in their business. 3 layers down, no idea. They couldn't tell you anything logistically. They expect all the people that they've paid, that they used to pay a lot of money to, and then they cut all their salaries, so all those people quit, all the good people quit, or they just straight fired them because they were expensive, and now they have whatever's left, and many of those people are there just running on inertia of whatever the previous guy did. They have no idea why they're doing it. They're just doing that, which gums up the works, especially when something comes into, and I think anybody who actually in the working class knows this. Something unusual goes into the system, and then it just breaks everything down because nobody knows why they did any of this stuff. They don't know how to fix a problem. They don't know how to solve anything because, well, they were never trained for that, and the people who knew what they were doing, they're long gone. They're 5 years gone. The company itself is just running on inertia and stock market. Large S, that's it. Just a bunch of money flooding into the stock market and flooding into their coffers from some latest and greatest because some billionaire said we're going to invest in this, and so it's a machine, right? That's all it is. So no, I think that they cannot do what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying I'm not disagreeing fundamentally. I'm disagreeing tactically. No, they really can't. Because if they went out there and actually did stuff like that, they can do these altruistic, stand on the mountain and say, see, I'm feeding the poor. They can do stuff like that. That isn't really going to solve the problem, right? Because solving the problem of just, this is that feed a man, for a day, kind of versus teach him how to fish kind of problem. That's sort of that problem. That, well, you can go and give poor people food. Well, that's great. But why wouldn't you just pay them more money to do the job that they're doing working in your company? Then you don't need to go do all that stuff. It just kind of cuts out all that middleman altogether. Or you could start demanding that, I don't know, taxes be cut. I mean, it's not like you don't have a lot of power that you wield, right? A bunch of billionaires out there have lots of power that they wield. They could be using some of that power for good by pushing on the House and the Senate and saying, hey, you need to start bringing taxes down. Dude, anybody making under $500,000 a year shouldn't be paying 1 penny in taxes. That's the truth. At this point, that really is the truth. If you're not even making 500 grand a year, no, you shouldn't be paying anything to anyone for any reason at this point. Because, I mean, my God, the only way poor people can stop being poor is to keep the money that they earn, right? So, yeah. But they won't do that. Probably because in that contract they signed, they won't do those kinds of lobbying things. They won't even talk about those kinds of things, which is why most of those billionaires are weighing they'll weigh in just about everything except income taxes. or deregulating businesses so that small businesses can flourish, because of course that would compete with them, their hegemony, and they are a part of the hegemony. I'm not trying to overtalk all this. I'm just saying, like, this is stuff that this has been like kind of building for a while with me, and I've been really bugged by it because I'm in the same boat you are. I watch all this and I'm like, no normal, rational, reasonable person would ever do this. And you're right. If you look at the fictional character in Dickens' novel, A Christmas Carol, there's his old boss, Fezziwig, right? That's the character who basically just gave away all of his money. And he had plenty of money. It's not like he was a poor guy. He had money. He could live the life he wanted to, but he didn't have a problem sharing the wealth with all his employees. No issues. And there used to be lots of rich people that were like that back in the day. It's where things like doorman came from. People can open their own doors. They have a doorman, but no, you hired a doorman because, well, not just to make it look like you were really successful, but you also did that because that was kind of a flex, and you knew that if you hired someone and paid them money, they were going to feel good about themselves, and so therefore your economy and everybody, they felt good, and they felt as though they were a part of the economy, not a spectator in the economy like we have with tens of millions of people now. Anyway, that was just sort of my thought on that, and I just thought I would share that with you.